Welcome to the Expandable Mind podcast, where I speak to creators, entrepreneurs, and experts in their field about concepts and topics that not only intrigue me but adds a sense of purpose and value to everyday life. I'm your host Vahin on the Expandable Mind podcast, and in this episode, I speak to Dr. Bhadrish Vallabh. Now, Dr. Vallabh is someone that I personally look up to, someone who overcame the struggles of racism in South Africa, yet has a remarkably amazing yet positive attitude towards life. Dr. Vallabh, thank you for coming onto the podcast. I'm going to shift the conversation to you and ask you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so you know, so I'm basically originally from the north side of the South Africa, so Limpopo province. That's where I was born, and I would consider myself as somebody who's a third culture hero. So I want to start with that because I think that's the reason why my life's a little complicated, and the reason I started by saying I'm a third culture hero. Phenotypically, I look Indian, but I'm a South African at heart, and I live in the Middle East. So basically, I had the opportunity of exploring the world, and I think being a South African, it's kind of given me the opportunity. So what I am at the present moment, I'm a physician working in the pharmaceutical industry, but also very passionate about the work that I do, and very happy family man. And like I said, I just basically enjoy the kind of experience that I'm having at the moment. But the most important thing for him, I'm just very happy. I just kind of get that feel that I'm in a happy space. So if I have to summarize and to say what I am, I think that's what I am, a third culture hero in a very happy environment.
No, that's brilliant. I wasn't expecting that. It was like a mind blow for me. When you say third powered hero, and what do you mean by that? And can you just like give us like a full on like meaning for you personally? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean a third culture hero. So for me, obviously being born in South Africa, I mean I just love my country. So when historically we all, I mean the so-called the Indian population in South Africa arrived here as workers, sugar plantations, etc. So and but we South African, right? At the end of the day, my birth certificate, I was born in Limpopo. So that makes us, that puts me into a space. Like I said, we grew up in South Africa. Yet when you go abroad and people look at you, they say, "Are you from India?" And I think that's the part that kind of say, "No, I'm not. I'm actually South African." Because I was born in South Africa. And to make it worse, when you go to the Middle East and you start working in that environment, and the same kind of things kind of come up again, to say, are you Indian? And at the end of the day, see, it's where you are brought up. And for me, the South African part is very, very important. And growing up as a South African, coming through, a lot of the era, I mean, be apartheid, and it's grown us, it's grown me, it's made me somebody. I think over the years, it's taught me so many lessons, from be it spirituality, be it emotional intelligence, IQ, social intelligence, whatever you want to call intelligence nowadays. People term it also very differently. It's given me the opportunity to kind of develop in that way. And that's why I come across, and I use this third culture bit. It's because, people are it's in a very challenging environment. You're South African uh, at heart, but you look differently, and then you go to another, go to the Middle East, and you obviously get called again some other things. It's a challenge part, it's a good part of knowing where you've come from, how you've developed, how you've grown, and in every bit of the way, there's this growth, and I've never ever looked back to say, what, the South African kind of thing pulled me back. No, it's helped me grow so much. So I think that's why I like the third culture part, because it's just a little more than what an average person would experience. And I think my life has been like that. It's been a little more than just moving a place. I think there's a lot of shift, be it mental, physical, I felt a lot, but over the years, I think that has helped me grow.
Okay. Yeah, and that's interesting, and I like the view, and I think I'm going to start adopting that into the way I say. So, if you don't mind, I can also like how I describe it, how to describe myself in future things and so forth. And I think you brought up apartheid and being a South African Indian. Can you just tell us your childhood because you've lived through it? I've been born. I was born in 2004, so I have no recollection. I just hear everybody else's experience. So why don't you give us like a overview of what your childhood looked like?
Yeah, so our childhood was very interesting. I think one of the things that I related the other day is that, when we went to a public pool, it was a big event because, first of all, it was a swimming pool. The thing is, Vahin, sorry, we never had, we couldn't afford a swimming costume those days. And the reason I'm bringing this up because these are little things that kind of just changed my life. Those days we had to hire a public swimming costume from the public pools, in order to get into a pool. Now, where apartheid came in, and this is, I think, part of it as well. The whole difficulty of actually not swimming in your own swimming pool, etc. But the thing where it hit me is when we had to apply to a university. And in those days, we had to ask for special permission from the government. It was called if I remember correctly, it was a special permit that was needed to study at a white university. So as much as, getting your grades was one thing, it was a challenge, but you still needed permission from the government to say you can then study at a white university. That's what universities were previously. So, getting 6 A's was okay. I mean, that's just one of the things that you had to get. But then you also needed special permission from the government. And for me, and then you enter a university, it's a class of 200, 180 white students, 20 black students. So anyone that's not white, I refer to as black, right? So we were 20 black students in an environment of about 180 white students. And growing up there, and one of the things about apartheid that really kind of hit me was filling in a form at UCT, and I won't forget this. And one of the blocks they said race, and I put 1,500 meters. So I got called up by the deputy dean to say, Bhadrish Vallabh, did you not understand the question? I said, no, I understood the question. I actually thought that you were looking to make good doctors here. And he looked at me and says, no, but that's what we're doing. But, we just needed the race so that, we kind of... I said, yeah, but I don't see the relevance. Because at the end of the day, UCT, you want a good doctor. Why do you want a good ex-doctor or a Y doctor? You need a good doctor. So these were little gems or little things that happened to me, and then obviously I needed a haircut, Vahin. Going to a little barber shop in Rondebosch. I will never forget this, man. 18-year-old, walking to the barber shop, and I actually sit on the chair, and the guy looks at me and says, you know what, I can't cut your hair. I said, but why? He says, no, you're not white. I said, interesting. And I walked out. I mean, this was in the middle of in Rondebosch, and I cried. I actually cried that day, and I said, "But what's wrong with this country?" I'm here, and I thought Cape Town was really, and then I think the other one, the part about apartheid and growing up is in 5th year as a medical student, and I'll never forget these things. You just don't forget, walking to the ward, and there was a white patient. And I'm sorry that I'm using the different demographics here, but in order to make the story that you understand, what you're going to go through, I go to this patient, who's a white patient, and he turns around and looks at me and says, you know what, you can't examine me. And I said, okay. I went back to my prof, and it was Prof. Immelman. May his soul rest in peace, but I think he's late also. And he came with me to the patient, and he says, patient, whatever his name was, this is a teaching hospital, and this is Dr. Vallabh. He's going to qualify next year, and he will be examining you because you signed off to say that this is a teaching hospital, and you would allow medical students to examine you. So unfortunately, sir, you do not have an option, but Dr. Vallabh will examine you. So these were little things that happened over the years, and like I said, growing up as a kid, you go through these things. And I don't, for me, it was never that these incidences or these episodes scarred me. They don't scar you, Vahin. They make you better. They make you learn to say how you should be behaving and how your attitude should be towards other people in life. So for me, I think these were all very good lessons. I've learned a lot. So apartheid for me, yeah, as much as in those days it hurt and it broke your heart, but I think Madiba taught us a big lesson. We need to move on in life. There's greater things, bigger things that you can achieve from your past. So yeah, a negative apartheid, but I think for me, I drew a lot of positives out of that. And I help, even with my teachings on a day-to-day basis, it kind of helps. So I hope I kind of captured that bit for you.
Yeah, you did definitely 100%. I think there's a few parts where I enjoyed it most, especially like where you filled in race 500 meters. That's a highlight for me. I wish I could have said I've done something like that risky in my life. But I would love to do something like that just once, like just have that fun in life, and so forth. I've always been an academic, so I've stuck to every rule, and recently I've just been breaking apart. I'm like, okay, I don't want to wear uniform today. I'm just gonna break apart. I'm gonna wear golf pants that looks like uniform, but yeah, just like started slowly but surely breaking rules in a way. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but I just want to experience life to the fullest potential. And it sounds like through your journey so far, and just like speaking about getting into university and going through the university process and so forth, you were able to actually like see the challenges in life, but you also took it to the fullest potential also. And speaking about medicine, which you studied at UCT, but in today's world, the idea of becoming a doctor, and I hear a lot of people, the idea of becoming a doctor is all about making money. I'd like to hear your view on was becoming a doctor like your first option, or was it like something that you always aspired in, or was it somebody that influenced you or something like that? And what is your purpose? What is your view on becoming a doctor? How were you going to help people?
Yeah, so I think for me there were multiple factors. I think the first one was indoctrination. I think, I think my granny, my late granny, I think she was the first person. Whenever she made a prayer, she would always bless me, and she'll say, "Make my grandson, make sure that he becomes a doctor." Okay, so that's how it started. I mean, this was from the age of 3, 4. So as a child, as a young child growing up, that's the one thing that's ringing in my head. I will be a doctor. So whether you call it brainwashing, blessing, I don't know, but it was something like that. I just felt this was the path for me. My granny started it. And those days, my parents believed, Indian parents specifically believed, that becoming a doctor and a teacher, doctor for men, teachers for women, because you can still get married and teach. But as a female, it becomes very difficult once you get married. So there were things like that was running around in the community. But for me, my father made it very clear that I will do medicine. You should become a doctor. But in my heart, in my head, I was an artist. You won't believe this, but I loved the arts. I loved Hamlet. I loved Merchant of Venice. I thought I was going to play the role of Shylock, and I was going to do Brutus, and I mean, I was like I don't know, I loved acting, but I couldn't. And I always think of a movie, and I'm sure, I don't know if you've seen this movie, but it's a brilliant movie. I think it's called Dead Poet Society. And the guy, it's kind of slipped my head who the actor was. But this poor guy also died of depression, But Dead Poet Society was my story. It's just that I wasn't like that kid, that committed suicide and because he couldn't do arts and, he was forced into doing medicine. But in my side, I must say that I said, you know what, let me do medicine. I mean, I can always do arts, as a side, or I can add it to later. But for me, the whole medicine journey began, like I said, from childhood. And coming to the point about, did I do medicine to kind of make money? It was, that kind of never featured. Yeah, we grew up very hard, very difficult times. We grew up in 2-bedroom homes. We struggled. I mean, I still remember, I mean, there were days when the shoes would have holes, we just couldn't afford. So whether becoming a doctor would have kind of helped me sort out all the poverty issues, we never thought of it that way. But there was always a bit about compassion, helping people. Yeah, that was a big thing. I mean, even like if you over the years, I mean, and I kind of maintain that serving people was going to be like the big thing for me, and obviously coming to and for me the serving people, but also the research element kind of fascinated me. So it was more, I think it was a little bit of both, the fascination, the helping, and then also the community kind of link. I think, I had a lot of support from the family, and a lot of support from within the community as well. So there were multiple factors, as to why I chose medicine. And I think at the end of the day, when I kind of look back and I said, did I make the right choice? And I said, you know what, it was. And I mean, today I'm sitting in the research side of things. So I'm working in industry,
And I also noticed that you're interested in arts, and this is like just building on to your hobbies, singing. And I think I'm one of your subscribers on YouTube. I've subscribed to the you sing the Budgeons, and I even saw my mom. She showed me a video on Facebook of you singing, and I must say that you have a really good voice, and it probably could be another alternative career that if you ever think about it. But yeah, I will leave links to all the YouTube videos in the description box or show box down below. And yeah, what like kind of put you into like the singing route, like getting you into there, like you were you had to get your grades, but at the same time you enjoyed singing. How did that actually like start? Okay, let me go that route also. Like,
so this happened the day I got my result that I passed medicine in Cape Town, and there was a friend, Ashwin Nashi. He introduced me to the stage. He says, you should get onto the stage because your voice, is a good voice. You would do okay with that. You do good. So I never ever looked back from that day. And I mean, and the point is, I never did too much singing. Or I did a lot of singing as a child. I did a lot of hymns, bhajans, as you said earlier. My dad continues. I mean, one of the things that we did as a family, I mean, it was every Saturday night. We went for prayer meetings and we sang at different homes. So you kind of go from family to family and you sing. So it kind of helped me. So I think so. That's where the vocal bit came. The culture bit, the singing bit, and I enjoy it. I enjoy beat. I enjoy rhythm, and I also enjoy pitch and vocal. So I think it's also from a musical family, right? So dad and mom singing all the time. In the house. I mean, you always get people doing a little bit of tuning here and there. So I think that's where the kind of singing influence came. For me, as it's part of my day to day, it also helps me balance my life a bit. It kind of feeds my soul. Now, I know this is going to sound very deep, but just trust me, it does so much. When I'm sitting and I'm doing, I mean, even if I'm doing emails, and if I have to just switch, I'll go onto a karaoke track and I'll start singing in between. So it kind of gives me the balance, it's very comforting, soothing. But also I know that I'm not going to be, like I said, like I was telling somebody, I might not go into 1 million viewers. That's not the goal for me. It's more like, do I feel happy doing this? But at the same time, if it's something that's going to make other people happy, why not? And I think that's where I think your mom picked up some of the kind of recording as well, But for me, I think singing has been more, like I said, the kind of balance in my life. And like I said, I didn't want to be a professional singer. And by definition of a professional singer is that you get paid for your singing, right? That's what my granny said. If people start paying you for your singing, you're going to lose all that you have. So I said, but that's like a curse, Don't do that to me, granny, because she wanted me to be a doctor and she didn't want me to go into the singing path. But I always thought that the singing bit is something that I would never want to ever give up. I always keep it there because it kind of fills a lot of my kind of not gaps, but it keeps me, like I said, fully nourished in my soul.
yeah. And this speaking upon the singing part, but you also, so after university, you had your medicine degree, and you took on singing and so forth. What is like other people? Did you actually like get? Did you fear other people's reactions, because a doctor singing is kind of not like typical thing? How did you actually break from that fear? Like, okay, it makes me happy, and if you were able to do it back in that time, and I'm realizing it quite early in my life, that if it makes you happy, you need to do it. How did you actually come to that realization? It's what I want to do, because we so influenced by everybody around us judging us.
No, that's a good point. The judging part was huge because, people say, I mean, look at this guy, he's a doctor and he's doing this. Do you have to? I mean, people would come to my dad. They won't come to me. It was a whole community thing those days. And come to my father and say, but like, how can he sing? He's a doctor. The other thing is, from the council, there was also a regulation that you cannot, if you go on the stage, you can't go and say Dr. Bhadrish Vallabh in like performing today. So they should put my name up as Bhadrish Vallabh singing. And then, I'll never forget this, Lanesha Times. Those are so weird, And there's like a headline, the singing doctor. It was a big thing those days in Lanesha. The singing doctor, and I thought, no, man, this is, if somebody reports me to the council, my license is gone, But I mean, look, it's not me. People were kind of, and those days it wasn't Facebook or Twitter or any of those, it was Lanesha Times. So it was a big thing. And, I mean, those are like some of those nerve-wracking moments where you said, am I going to be reported for this? There was a lot of, back chatting. You could hear, my father was getting, they say, do you have to? And then my dad would come to me and say, but do you have to go and do shows? I said, but Dad, I really enjoy singing, But coming back to your point is I think that there were, I think doctors had to behave in a certain way those days. Like now it's different, you see, I think Riyad Moose, our comedian, it's like, he's a doctor, I mean, he can be a comedian. But those days, if Bhadrish, who was a doctor, had to sing, it was like, no man, this is not, it didn't look right, But it didn't bother me because at the end of the day, I felt I needed to sing, I needed to be happy. But I was working with my space. It wasn't so much about, other people. And then I think that's one of the things in life, that you should be content of things that you want to do. You don't do things for other people, you do it for yourself, right? And I think that's what kind of kept me going with the singing and being the doctor. So yeah, and then I've seen recently also a lot of the Idol show. I think there were quite a few doctors on the stage, and I thought, okay, can you imagine? And I'm not saying, and I'm really not bitter about it that I didn't have it in my days. That we had those Idol shows or whatever, but it was a bit different. That the streams, medical people, like rigid, white jacket, tie. And the other big thing that happened while with the singing, I also had an earring. So this is very interesting. I mean, you'd never believe this, right? So I wore an earring to hospital one day, and the consultant pulled me over. He says, take that off. I said, why? He says, no, in this hospital, doctors don't wear earrings. I said, well, I mean, it doesn't affect the way I treat patients. Why is it affecting you? So, I'm I was a rebel, Vahin, you should know that. I'm not encouraging that you be a rebel, but you need to question the system. You have to. And then we went up to the department head. And the department said, so asked the consultant, what's the issue? So, he said, look, this guy has got an earring, So he said, but that doesn't affect patient care. Leave him. And I was so happy. And I'll never forget the name. And I'm going to say the guy's prof's name, Professor Van Gelteren. He was a guy that saw a little more than the earring in me. He said, no, this is a good doctor. It's got nothing to do with the way he looks, he's delivering. But coming back to the point about, it was not so much about the doctors that can't sing. You have to do certain, I did push against the grain sometimes, a lot of times. The only thing I didn't do is challenge my father to say, I want to become an artist, I want to be an actor and not a doctor. Because, it was a bit hard to push back there. I mean, like your father tells you, you should be a doctor. I mean, it was like, yes, Dad, I will. Yeah. I mean, it was just a little different. Like I said, the paradigms were different. Yeah, so so I think it wasn't it's very straightforward that the singing just kind of happened. Yeah, there were issues. It wasn't like you just pick up and you record something and that you had to think a lot about it. But at the end of the day, you also needed. I think people. I was fortunate that people picked up the talent to say, you know what, let's take on this kid. He's as a doctor, but he's got a good voice. And there were people in Indonesia those days. They said, you know what, he can sing. Mohammed Rafi and some songs that they actually started. They kind of felt that I could do certain songs better, so they started kind of giving me show promoters actually came up to me and said, no, can you do a song for us here? And then they started nominating you for awards. There were lots of things that happened. So yeah, so that's how the singing bit went, and the doctor bit. It's very interesting times.
It's nice to see that. Should I say you took on an extracurricular besides medicine? Like often you'd like get a lot of people, and I notice now on YouTube, doctors actually come on YouTube and they do their live. Like you spoke about the paradigm shifts because your parents are saying, okay, you need to do this, need to do that. What advice could you give to today's youngsters, people like myself that are heading into university next year or the year after? Um, to follow what they want instead of like what society wants. Yes, it's good to listen to your parents. Don't ever say that I don't listen to my parents. But it's also society has a big saying on what you have to do. Like you spoke about Pavlov's influence, he how he can do it to dogs and what like that, and society can actually do it to you, just by saying, oh, you need to become a doctor. This you get so much of feedback from everybody and you're like so confused. How can you actually like what advice can you give to people?
Yeah. So for me, it's I think young people growing up, if you have a passion, you follow your passion. I think that's number one. I mean, that's how I grew my kids. I mean, I never ever put pressure on them to say they should do medicine. I mean, and I'm very. I shouldn't say I'm very grateful or fortunate, but both of them, if they've not chosen medicine. Okay, they both one went psychology, and she said she did psychology because she wants to study my mind, which is fine. And then my son went into engineering, which into climate change and kind of sustainable energy and so forth. But for youngsters, I think the most important thing is having the passion. If you've got the passion, and I think it's important for parents as well. It's not just so much like in a family situation. I think parents should be very supportive. I think, and I really don't blame my dad. I never ever, say that, my dad forced me. I think that's the wrong sentence. My dad did what was right for him at that time. That was the time. That was the paradigm. And he felt, kids should be doctors and lawyers, and I forgot the lawyer bit, or must be a teacher. That's how they were growing up. But for today's generation, for today's time, you got the passion, you follow your passion. Like you said, if some doctors feel he would do so well just by doing, being a YouTuber or giving advice, etc., go for it. If you feel, you want to do full-time X, Y, or Z, if you got the passion, follow it. So for me, it's just about following your dream. And sometimes, I think we tend to or rather we overthink it. But I think it's if you got a certain thing you think you can do, and so, if you have the right passion and you've got the right energy, I think you should follow that. That's my advice.
Yeah, we spoke about it in a few other podcasts about following passion, and then I like the advice that the different phrasing, following advice, and getting it that way. But now I wanted to actually like dive into. I'm an academic, so I love studying, but you also you can put yourself as an academic and classify yourself as that. You got quite a few qualifications on your name, and how much time did you have to sacrifice from your family? It's the idea of understanding from your perspective. You were a doctor and you wanted to further your education, and you had a family and all of that type of things. How did you manage your time? How much time did you have to sacrifice from your family in order to further your career? Do you regret that time, or was it worth it? Does your family? How did you get them to understand that?
All right. So So, so I break. So let's start with how I use my time. I think that'll be a good start, right? So you have 24 hours in a day. I mean, most people have 24 hours in a day. Okay, some people push more, but in my normal 24 hours, I give 7 hours of sleep minimum. Okay, 8 hours go towards work. Okay, we'll come back to the work side. The other 9 hours, I break up into what I would call 3 HFS. The 3 HFS would be 3 hours I would give to, so 1 hour each to health, hygiene, and hobby. All right. The 3 other Fs would be family, friends, and faith. And the last 3 S's would be service, soul, and smile.
Yes.
So if you look at collectively, and I mean, look, you can't be exact. You can't say, I didn't do 60 minutes here or whatever. But that's how I break up my day. So the 8 hours of your work, and now that I'm qualified, okay, that you would do your full-time work. But for me, the thing is, and the question that you're asking, what happened, as you kind of develop your family or you have your family situation. There were situations where the kind of equilibrium shifted a bit, right? Because you would steal from your wife and your children. You have to make a few sacrifices. And I'm very thankful to my wife because, over the years, I did steal some time. And the kind of nice little classification I gave you of the 24 hours didn't happen that way. Because, those family hours, the 111 that you stole, you kind of pushed into your environment, or rather you were pushed into the area where you were trying to kind of gain, be it qualification, etc. The point I want to make is, and there was a lovely, I forgot the guy's, I think in chemistry we had, it was called the Chatelier's equilibrium principle. So in life, you do have a kind of equilibrium situation, but if you need to kind of balance, then you shift, okay? And the whole equilibrium shift, but you got like a new kind of center. And that's what you try and do. You're always moving, you're accommodating, you're taking from here, but then you try and give back. Now, lost time is never something that you can ever give back to a family. So, unfortunately, then that's why you call it a sacrifice. So, over the years, I have, from a qualification perspective, when I did my master's, I asked my wife, I said, could I do this? And I know it sounds weird that you'd ask your spouse for permission, but it's good to do that. But I mean, sometimes you could get an answer like this is not a good time. But I mean, fortunately for me, there was never that. There was always support to say kind of go ahead and do the studying. For me also to give young people advice that if you're going to be studying, I know a lot of people say you should continue studying for a lifetime. I feel studying you should get it done before you're 35. This is just me. Please, there could be a lot of controversy. I could make it a very controversial subject to say, you can't stop studying. But trust me, you're studying, but you should get your qualifications. It's just good to get before you're 30, 35. And the reason being is that you start moving in your late 30s. You start moving into your careers. You start getting into different jobs. You obviously, would want to land up finally doing something on your own, but that's the kind of, you need that background and to kind of develop a move or get some kind of momentum. That's what you do. You get your qualification sorted and then you start doing your work with over the years. I think the balance, it's something that you might struggle to get, but I think the initial formula that I said, you start getting in your little health regime, you get into a fitness regime, and I think that's big. If you don't get that, it doesn't help you get that balance quickly. So there are a number of things, and like I said, like we touched on earlier, the singing bit, the spirituality bit, the friends are very important. There are people that are actually, they have everything, but they don't have friends. And then they go into this lonely bit, like I'm so lonely, yeah, but where are your friends? So friends are important. Yeah, family is important. You can't, family, like you say, you can't choose family, right? But friends are important. And even having some kind of faith. Yeah, you might say, but you could be an atheist, but atheist is a kind of own way, it's its own faith, whatever you want to call it, right? But you have that as well. But these are the things that help you gain that balance And I believe, if you do have some kind of structure as to how you're going to devote some of your times, you can achieve. But I think, just to kind of end with this, there are sacrifices. Unfortunately, it's not always that your 24 hours are kind of well cut out and you got your 9 and 7 and your 8s. It's not every time. But if you've got a framework, I think you can make it happen.
Yeah, I like the framework that you propose, and I made a note of it myself. Yeah, um, I've taken a lot of key things out of here personally. And look, I kind of want to follow down your path. Look up to you as an idol, and that's where I would like to ask. When you were, and this kind of goes back, and I was kind of sidetracking off here, but when you were in UCT, how did you manage your time? Like, I'm a big believer in productivity systems, and I try to learn from everybody else, and I believe I'm a lifelong learner. Um, that how did you find a way to manage your time? Because med school, every time I hear, either you burns out, people say, oh, you're gonna burn out one way, and they'll set that like mentally, you like already, when I enter med school, I'm gonna burn out at some stage. Well, and that kind of speaks to society speaking again, and the influence on society. But what advice would you give to people that are in med school and they're just starting their med school journey, and they like want to further their career, they want to carry on learning, and carry on learning? What advice would you give them in terms of time management, besides the framework that you've proposed? From your personal experience, what advice or recommendations would you give them from your learning, your experience?
Yeah, I think, and you're asking specifically as a medical student, right? So,
Yes.
medical students get bombarded from day one. Or any other student, but I mean, for medicine, it's just like a volume overload situation. It's crazy. And I mean, I remember, but the only thing that we did differently those days is that we had a lot of sport. So we did hiking, we did running. The funny thing is, like, we weren't allowed to stay at the res. So it was, and then I had to actually try and work out my own accommodation, and I lived illegally in Newlands, behind a shop. There was one room and like a bathroom. It was my uncle's shop, so, and because of Group Areas Act. So this was in Newlands, and Newlands was just like up the, the UCT was just up the road. So I could just get a bus and I could jump on it. And the guy that protected me, and kind of told my uncle that, look, it's safe to leave Bhadrish here, is Mornay Duplessis. I don't know if you'll know this gentleman, but he was the South African captain, rugby captain. And he told my uncle, look, he's going to be okay here. And the reason I'm bringing up Newlands, because I could run up that hill. Newlands was Dean Street. If you ever go to Newlands, please drive up Dean Street. It's so steep, and we ran up, and we had, but those days I think I got a bicycle, kind of somebody's bicycle. I don't know whose it was, but I know somebody gave me a bicycle. And never ever did that, As a kid, yeah, we did it in Lens, but this was like riding in Newlands, But that was all the bits that kind of helped us with the physical activity. And then the biggest kind of element was also joining a community, where I went and I sang bhajans on weekends, met a lot of people. Because as a student, it's not just books, because books will drive you crazy. So you need that extra hours, like I said, you need that hour, you need some friends, you need the community. And again, I think that's where the singing bit helps. So for a student, I think it's going to be critical. Going into the academics, no issue. But I think if you don't have those other bits, be it like a service, go and help out Ole John. Go and read a story to an elderly person, or just go and help somebody. Like I said, or go to, or do something. What's your hobby? If you enjoy singing or you want to do something, but get those little hours together. And I think you kind of avoid the burnout or even the boredom. Because a lot of students will say, you know what, after second year, I've had a number of students that said, look, I want to quit medicine in second year. I've had that, a number of them that would come to me and say, no, I'm not going to continue. And then you'd sit down with them and say, look, why are you going this route, Well, what are some of the issues? And then you'll see they're burning out, concentrating too much in certain areas, of over-focusing. And sometimes, you need to leave something and come back to it. You know the theory, that one, right? If you can't get something,
Yeah.
move away from it and then come back 15 minutes later. You'll get it. Because that's how our circuits are, right? Your brain also something. You just need something to refresh. So I think that would be the recipe, for medical students. Have it balanced, and try and incorporate the FSH or HFS, whichever you want to look at it. But I think that formula would work. I think it's a good recipe. I hate the kitchen, so I'm not a kitchen guy, but I think for me, like life lessons like this, these recipes help. Try to be practical, and I think that would probably pave the way for a lot of students as well.
We spoke now you just spoke about university life balance and so forth, something that I will be heading into. But when it comes to work-life balance, and now I think this is like kind of your focus and your expertise at the moment. You've been in the industry, from the work industry, for years now. You can probably give a figure, but what does work-life balance mean to you?
Yeah, so work-life for me is, if work-life balance equals, for me, good spiritual health, good physical health, and good mental health. I think that equation would work for me. If I can nourish those three areas, I think I'm good. And I mean, even, and thank, I'm very fortunate. Our company, it's a very big thing. We make absolutely sure we drive that. As leaders, you make sure people are achieving that. For example, emails, you'll even see, you don't have to answer emails after a certain time. That's right. I've had managers in the past that would call me over weekends. And, if you didn't take a call, how could you not take my call? I'm important. Yeah, I know you're important, but I'm not working. But I think at the end of the day, and also you need good managers, or you need people that can understand that you are in charge of your calendar. So you push in your 8 hours, like we discussed, 8 hours of work. Very important. And then I think at the end of the day, you need to, for me, work-life balance would mean that, if you're not giving the right time towards certain areas outside of work, it'll affect your work. So, again, it's like having the right ingredients, right? And making sure productivity is from those areas. So, let's just start with your physical health. And I tell my kids this. I say, if you are not in good shape, and I know, again, a lot of people will debate. They say, but you obviously, and they feel I'm neurotic about health because and I'm not. I'm just a very normal person. But if you have good physical health, it helps your mental health, and ultimately it'll help your spiritual health. And I think, like I said earlier, collectively, that would contribute significantly towards a good work-life balance.
And I want to diverge from this a little bit now, but you spoke about spiritual health, mental health, physical health. Do you think that sums into your hiking journey thus far? I know that you're a hiker, and it's a big passion. My dad's been with you on a few hikes, but I'd like to join you once in the next few years. But it's how do you use hiking? So besides singing, you also hike, and you spoke a little bit about running. Did you compete competitively in running?
No, I find running is like, I admire runners, but I don't know, I just have a thing about overstraining joints. So, I feel a lot of runners end up complaining about degenerative or accelerated degenerative joint problems. So I'm a little against running. So I'm a walker. And that's why I kind of take heavy onto hiking and walking. But hiking for me is a very big element of spirituality, because for me particularly, it's a sense of belonging. Spirituality is all about that. You belong to a certain group. You go there and you feel, man, I feel so good. And every hike, for me, it's not about the destination, it's the people that you walk with. And I think the conversations that you have are just amazing. You learn so much. You empower so much, you grow so much. But I think that's the part that guides me. Hiking equals for me my spirituality. And I know when we obviously together, going into the nature. I mean, for me, it's just an awesome feeling. It's a feeling of coming alive, and it's also. I mean, it's partly also. It is something that prepares you for a lot of things to come. And I always tell when you get tasked at work, and it could be we go through a lot of reviews, articles, preparing slides. I mean, strategy sessions. And what I use a lot of times is, I'm a little bit of a fan of altitude hiking. I know my guys kill me for this because I'll plan we'll go to 6,000 meters. But for me, it's not about going about altitude. It's about the preparation. It's the process. It's about taking a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's not so much about getting to the top. It's about getting people to the top and bringing them down without injuries. I'm a big fan of that. I want 100% clean slate. I take people up and I bring them down. That's my job. But at the end of the day, the reason why we do what we do is that we help each other, and then we know we belong. That's our hiking club. But besides just the spirituality part, I think it also helps our physical health, right? Because you're working out, you're walking. We tend to party a little, but that's after the hike. But it's okay. We're not totally neurotic about becoming super athletes, but we're good. We have the balance, like I said. Even with hiking, it helps us in that way.
And you speak about balance. Through the whole podcast episode that we've been producing right now, it's you speak about balance in such a way in all the contexts that you've spoken about. But one of the key things is, and many people out there, probably when I get into the work world or even in university and so forth, I think one of the things is that you get classified as a workaholic after a certain stage. You're like, okay, I don't know when to put the book down. I don't know when to stop working. And how do you actually advise people like that? I think you've mastered it by saying, okay, I'm going to come down to South Africa. I'm just going to stay here for some time and take some time off. How have you what kind of mental toolbox or mental process have you put in place for yourself in order to schedule time off, in order to recoup? If you can think in that type of military type of way.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's a bit of a it's you need to, some areas or sometimes in life you do need these switches. Some of these switches you're going to have to just switch off, and then times where you feel you just have to be at your best, you just do it. So I think these so-called South African, when I come back home, when I do meet my friends, when I do the hiking, these are, I would call, the refueling stations of my life. I have to do them. My poor wife would know. She struggles about coming to South Africa, and not that she struggles, but she would prefer to be kind of going elsewhere. But she knows that when we come back here, it's a big deal for me. I need this. It's my little nourishment. I need the refueling. It's like pressing the Control Alt Delete button for me. It's like, hey man, I need to start. So you kind of just feel refreshed. It's just the whole. So if you ask me, do I have like a process or a toolkit? It's very difficult, except to say that these kind of coming back home. I even go back to the place where I was born. So I will go to Venda, which is the north in Limpopo. My wife finds it very crazy.
Yeah.
She said, "But why do you want to go there?" I said, "I don't know. I just go there if I stand on the soil and I feel refreshed. I don't know what it is, but I need to be here." And she can't understand this. And I said, "But you know what? I don't know." So coming back to your point is, do I have a process? I would say, it's a mental thing, but I think these little things help. It just kind of get me together. Yeah, it just helps me recoup, I think. But I don't think I have a well-defined kind of way to say why I would do this. It's an automatic thing that just drives me. And like I said, sometimes, certain things, but coming, so I think one of the things that you ask is that how do you So when it comes to work, it's also you need to. I always believe in working smart and not hard, right? And then my boss would say, you know what, so I'll tell you I'm going to South Africa. So he says, you know what, you could be going to the moon long as you deliver your project. I mean, that's how, I had a good boss. I mean, sometimes you have good bosses in life, you know. And then he said, look, I don't care where you're going, even if you're going to the moon, you get your task done, I'm good. So I think with that flexibility, it allows me to kind of move around, you know, and to come and do my refueling. But I think when it comes to work, as I said, I'm very project driven. So, you know, if a certain thing is due, I would put in my time. Again, I would, you know, there are times obviously you do overwork. But I mean, you know, it must have been a crisis. And I'll give you a good example. And I don't want to divert too much, but the time of COVID-19, I'll never forget this, man. It was the 24th of December, 2019. Yes, 2019. That's when my computer got hit to say, you know what, something's happening in China. It seems your particular drug works. And my molecule, or the molecule that I'm in charge of, is an HIV drug called Kaletra. And they said, you know what, so the WHO, everyone was on my case, you know, to say, look, help us out. So those, you won't believe this, but I pushed over, I mean, that wasn't even an 8-hour work. I pushed 16 to 20 hours a day. Because the whole world, it's a pandemic, right? Things were going crazy. They thought the HIV drug was working. What do? You can't go and say 8 hours and I must go and sleep and on. You can't do that. Because the world was under attack. Yes. Okay, we had this virus, we needed a cure, we needed a molecule. So things went that time went crazy. And that's why I don't even forget the date, because, you know, I mean, really everything just went a little crazy. A little abnormal, that situation, but the point I'm trying to make is that, yeah, you know, when it comes to normality again, I think there are certain buttons you can say, you know what, that 8 hours you're going to stop. And then you need to be doing your other bits as well. But I mean, I don't think it's a well-defined process, you know. And I just feel sometimes you need to just draw the line. Yeah.
And I like that you brought us to the point of COVID-19 and that part of life, because as a doctor and as somebody that works in the pharmaceutical field, and I think you were on like the top level. You were speaking to WHO, like you just said. What is I think this year goes back to the work-life equation where you have your equilibrium. But what would you recommend? A lot of people right now are suffering like, oh, we don't want to go back to work because we're in the comfort of our house, or either some of them are burnt out, and there's so much of confusion in the world right now. Like, I remember that I hated being at home. I couldn't be at home during that level 5 lockdown in South Africa. It was like driving me crazy. I enjoyed being outside. What kind of like advice would you give to people to returning to normality in a way? If I don't know if I'm getting that correct, like in that perspective, like getting them back into like their mind frame that the world is going to be fine now, it's going to continue moving forward. And what advice would you give to people returning to like that balance again, that equilibrium?
Yeah. So look, I think this was one of many pandemics to come. I think COVID-19 is the first. I don't want to scare anyone, but I think honestly, if you look at it, and I'm not Nostradamus as well, but I think we're going to get hit with a few more pandemics, you know, in the years to come. So, given, we know, I think scientifically, if you just look at the way viruses mutate and the whole, you know, the B14 and the 15, the story is happening, and as we speak now, you know, the mutants are kind of happening and forming. So over the years, there's going to be more pandemics, and you know, things will come through. My advice is, I think, the good news is the vaccines will be coming a lot faster, because I think people kind of get the viruses worked out very quickly. They know the shape, they can do the spike protein, they can map it, and they can form antibodies. They've got different mechanisms, etc. So my advice would be, you know, people, number one, should not panic. Number two, the vaccine, you know, some people got some stories, and I can't believe this, you know, there will even be medical people that would be speaking, and they're very anti-vaccine. So I think this is going to be another topic. We won't go into this, But I think if you got a vaccine and we've got data to say that it works, scientific data, I think people should use vaccines because it'll guide them, it'll protect them, it'll provide the immunity. And I think we got data to show less hospitalizations, less deaths, and so forth. I think the norm is also going to be this whole social distancing thing. I don't know if you've noticed this, but now when you go to gatherings, there's like an automatic 2-meter thing that people will do, And you look and say, this is what COVID's done to us, right? And you adapt to new behaviors. Even the masks, people still have, I'm like that, but I'd keep my mask on, and then I thought like, I'm okay here, it's an open field. Why am I wearing a mask, Yeah, so I think certain behaviors, I think people will continue doing, and it's not bad ones, I think the social distancing, hygiene, I think people are using a lot more sanitizer, etc. But if we start doing things, and I think it goes back to my H, remember one of the H, 3 H's, hygiene, I think it's going to play a big role going forward. It'll help us even from pandemic side, etc. Also the way countries make decisions on blocking, stopping, lockdowns. And I think our president's done a very good job when it comes to, certain lockdown periods. I think we did good. South Africa, look, there could be different opinions, but I saw certain times, when the lockdowns came, we did good. We also kind of alerted the world, and certain variants came in South Africa. It was good. But the future, but I think people should be real. I feel, the vaccines will help. And also there are new treatment modalities that are coming through. And again, this would be another podcast, but, luckily we have treatments now that you can take on day 2 or day 3. If you're feeling a little uneasy and you are positive, you can take some medication that could abort or can reduce viral loads immediately. You can also get newer antibodies, etc., that people can get injected and they get saved. So I think from a treatment perspective, from a prevention perspective, we are going to be well prepared. So there should not be panic. From a science perspective, I think we're right there. People can develop a vaccine within 9 months. So I don't, or within 6 to 9 months. So there's not going to be that panic going into the future.
Yeah, I like the assurance that you're kind of giving the generation to come and the doctors to come. It kind of gives hope, but also excitement simultaneously. So it's a good thing, but I kind of like don't want another level 5. It's like at the back of my mind, please don't let that happen again. And finally, we come into the last part of your podcast episode. It's been really great chatting to you, Dr. Vallabh. And this comes to making hard decisions. And you spoke about moving to the UAE from South Africa, and it's probably one of the hard decisions. Moving anywhere in the world for anybody, moving away from your family, moving away from your parents, anything like that is a hard decision. What sort of preparation? You're a strategy type of person. You're very meticulous in your ways, in which you plan things, as you mentioned, with the hike, planning a hike, getting people up, getting people down, clean slate. What sort of planning did you go through when you were moving from South Africa to the UAE? What is your thinking line? What did you have to make sure that your family was? What is your bucket list?
Yeah, it was a very tough move. I had this attitude about my blood is green, I will never leave the country. And honestly, I really wanted to be here for the rest of my life. But it so happened, with regard to your career progression and growth, there were certain factors that would have not allowed me to kind of get to the peak of where I wanted to be in South Africa. So I had to look for another place. Now, when the opportunity came, and it was, my manager then came up to me and said, look, I've got a post for you. You need to kind of develop a similar system that we have in South Africa. Can you kind of cut and paste, but I want you to take it to the Middle East. And I said, no, look, I can do it from South Africa. And then a year later, he came back to me and says, you know what, this is not going to work. You have to get into the Middle East. To kind of make things happen. You have to be there yourself. So I had a year to prepare. So I think that's the first thing. It took me 12 months just to kind of, what am I going to be doing there? It's a new system. You start from scratch. So that kind of gave me a lot of palpitations. Kind of just what am I going into, and is it going to work? The second point was, leaving my parents behind, and they're aging parents. They're older, they were old, they are old, and you don't want to leave old parents behind because, they're very fragile. So you need to be there if they need you. But luckily, I have a strong kind of family support system. So, like, extended family, my sister, I had family. They said, no, you know what, we'll help. There's no issue, and they were mobile. So important is mobility. If my parents were mobile, it was a positive sign to say they could manage on their own. But the third critical part was my kids. So if I'm going to move, how are the kids going to manage? Am I taking them out at a critical time? Because, you got different phases at school. So, I couldn't just pull them out and then... And Kavita, my daughter, was the best. She says, look, don't talk to me until you get things in writing. I thought, wow, that was like, what? You're 14-year-old giving me... She says, yeah, don't talk to us. Get things in writing and then we'll decide. I said, okay. But the point she was making is that, look, let's be sure. If we're going, then, Dad, I'm going to have to make new friends. And I get it. It's very difficult for a 14-year-old to leave school as well. But I think those were some of the things where I had to think ahead. Would the kids be okay? Will the education system be as good or better than what we're getting presently? Will my parents be okay? But then the first element that I touched on, the work situation. I'm going into an area, will people accept me? And I just heard also that, that time, that the 3 previous people that took the position, they left the company within a month. And here I am, the 4th person going into the Middle East. What if they do the same to me? Or what if I decide to, reject the offer or not even like the job? I have to come back. So when it came to decision, I had to look at a number of factors. The career, will I be okay there? Will the kids be okay? I had to think of my parents. And then I had to also do some strategic thinking from an education perspective. So I kind of looked at the system in South Africa and what was happening. Personally, I wasn't very happy to way, our quality system, our metrics, kind of the measures. And I was getting a little sad. I was a bit saddened, when I saw the quality of care, be it teaching, be it hospitals. And I thought, man, this is not what I had in mind here. Things weren't looking very positive for me. I thought the education system could have been better, and I felt my kids needed to be more competitive. I needed to get them into an environment where they tested a bit more. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that South Africa did not test them. I think South Africa prepared them very well. But it prepared them as a good South African person and in the South African context. Were they good enough for the globe? Or was it strong enough for the rest of the world? I couldn't answer that, So I think those were some of the things that made me think to say, maybe I need to introduce them to an international system, let them get into a school where they could be challenged a lot more as well. So I think those were some of the factors when it came to making a decision, going into the UAE, and whether it's going to work or not. So a lot of anxiety, a lot of palpitations. But I think, what kind of helped me is also I had some good people I spoke to and then say, you know what, you should go, give it a try. And then there were other people that went through as well. So, you kind of also talk to people and get their experiences. So you do your bit of insights gathering, right? Factual discussion. You look at your support systems, and then you say, you know what, this is the way I want to go. So I think collectively, so that was the approach that I kind of took when I went into the UAE. I don't know if I got the picture, but I think that was more or less, And you come back to what I started with. The whole Middle East, that's where the whole third culture hero bird started, And the reason I end the title with hero, or the phrase with hero, is you could do third culture, but I was a hero because I thought I made a success out of it, right? If I didn't have that hero part there, then I thought, I kind of messed up. But even messing up doesn't mean that you've lost out. It's just that maybe certain paths you chose weren't correct. I could have been lucky that I took this path and I became a hero. But I think to your point, I think there was some adequate preparation and making the right decision, getting the facts right. As from a career perspective, if I did this in South Africa, if this is what the Middle East did not have, I picked up there were gaps. And there were gaps, and I kind of remedied that, and we kind of made it better, and things got better. So yeah, I think that was the approach from a strategic perspective.
Now, I think that like puts the highlight for the podcast episode. It's been really great. And now finally we have the wrap up questions. It's the rapid fire questions, and you can give us a sentence or maybe even a little bit more. But there's a few 6 questions that we're going to go through. And it's quick questions that just give us like a brief headline on it. So if you can tell me 3 of the most influential people in your life and how they've impacted you.
Nelson Mandela, my dad, and Gandhi. And how they've impacted my life?
Yes.
I think their leadership and just the way they went about life. I kind of use a lot of their principles to kind of help me.
Okay, I like that. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh man, I think I should have taken a what do you guys call it, a gap year, and traveled the world.
Gap year,
Yeah, I would have traveled the world a bit earlier.
But with any historical figure, if you could have a cup of tea with them, who would you choose?
Yeah, look, I mean, you might say I'm overdoing this, but I would honestly would want to spend some time with Madiba. I would really would like to sit and have a long cup of tea. I mean, really, Nelson Mandela.
Okay, that sounds really insightful. There's been no podcast guest that has said Madiba, so you're the first. What's your, if you don't mind expanding upon this, and this is a little bit personal, what would you say is your biggest failure? And can be either emotional, physical, even achievement. What would you say it's the most, your biggest?
I think my failure would be, I think one of the things that I did want to change is some of the health systems and the way communities and the health services were in, for example, the area I came from, Indonesia. I wanted to develop stronger community health clinics, etc. I think I did okay. I set up a lot of asthma clinics, etc. But I wish I could have just done so much. I tried to influence and tried to push, but maybe I could have just done a lot more there. Yeah.
Okay. What is the most important lesson you've learned over your journey thus far?
There's no such a thing as failure. For me, whenever someone tells me you can't do that, I don't know why. I won't even do that. So the biggest thing is I've always challenged. I think my dad always tells me keep on pushing the button. So my biggest kind of in my journey, I've always learned in a way. Like I said, I've fallen a few times, but that's kind of helped me grow. And like I said, in my whole life has been like that. I think it's just the way we were programmed. But those are the things that help me.
Okay. If there's one thing in the world that you could change at a snap of a finger, what would that be?
The way the climate is changing. I would, if I could change that, because I think it's not, at the moment, the physical state of the earth, it's not where it's supposed to be. If I could change that, I think that would help us, change a lot of things. But specifically, I mean, it's a climate bits as well. I think things are moving a little too fast for me. So if I could change that, or rather, if I could just slow down things from not going downhill, that would be. I would want to save the earth.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, and that comes to the end of your podcast session, Dr. Vallabh. Really appreciated your time once again. And yeah, your insight is brilliant. Your frameworks, your strategies, I think your life story is just like really a roller coaster, ups and downs. And there's so much that I've taken out of it personally, and I hope the audience as well takes out of it. And yeah, any final comments to our audience?
No, I really enjoyed the interview. Thanks. And firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope I could spread some magic I think you're right. We all learned through a lot of these experiences, but I just sincerely hope that some of I could help share some of my experience that could help other people grow and get to the next level as well. But also, I'd like to wish you everything of the best. This is a fantastic platform, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vallabh. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. To our listeners out there, thank you for listening. Links that were mentioned during the episode are in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a 5-star rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at expandable_mind. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.